Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Treasury Notice 2025-42, New Rules for Beginning of Construction. Today's date is August 18th, 2025. The information presented today is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or legal professional for personalized guidance. On that note, Lee Barkin, would you like to take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. And as you mentioned, today is August 18th, so it's Monday. And the big news is on Friday, Treasury released their guidance, which we're going to talk about. I love when they drop guidance on Friday. It gives me something to do over the weekend.
Right.
Uh, this, overall, just kind of spoiler alert here, was a bit of mild guidance. Like there were all the big terrible things we thought might be happening, and a lot of folks were predicting calamities could occur, ended up not happening. So it was fairly straightforward, and we're going to walk through what was in the guidance. Just as a bit of backgrounder, we're talking about OB3, and the rule in OB3 said that for solar ITC, solar and wind for 48E and 45Y, the asset must be placed in service by 12/31/2027, or it must begin construction on or before July 4th, 2026, and then subsequently placed in service in the next 4 years. So those words honing in on begin construction are really what was in question here, because historically we have a lot of really good guidance about what the definition of beginning of construction is. There's a physical work test and a 5% safe harbor, 16 years worth of guidance around what does it actually mean to begin construction on a solar project. And that was potentially thrown into chaos by a executive order that came out right after on July 7th that instructed Treasury to come up with new guidance that would redefine what beginning of construction is very explicitly to restrict the use of broad safe harbors unless a substantial portion of a subject facility has been built. So there was language in the EO, which you can read by following. We always put in the hyperlink so you can look at our slides and go ahead and click on the link and read through the EO. And it came out with a lot of sort of fanfare around, wow, that could be potentially very bad. And at the time, you might remember we emphasized this is trumpet noise. And it's trumpet noise because you don't need an executive order for Treasury to release guidance. It can do that at any time, and it can rescind guidance at any time. So there's a fairly performative nature of this executive order that was done specifically to pacify a group of sort of holdouts, the Freedom Caucus members on the House side. At the very last minute, when this language was problematic for them, Trump let them know, you're going to go back and sign off and vote for this bill, and don't worry, I'll sign an executive order changing the definition of beginning of construction. And that was meant as a way to pacify a group of folks that were unhappy ultimately with this rule that allowed this beginning of construction, which was slid in at the last moment by a couple of moderate Republicans on the Senate side. So the EO mandated or directed Treasury to come out with guidance, and guidance came out. That's what happened on Friday. So I'm going to recommend everybody follow that link and read the guidance. It's not that bad. It's 20 pages, and it actually was fairly helpful aside from the beginning of construction, and it added language that clarified some things. It's actually pretty good. I would say net positive. And Treasury did a really good job of basically there were a lot of conversations that were happening that they kept private. And there were not a bunch of leaks around this particular guidance that was coming out. And so they hats off to them. They did a really good job. So this notice 2025-42 starts off, even the first couple sentences, it's being very responsive, and it's saying it's providing guidance for this executive order. And then they add some language about what was in the executive order, basically repeating what we just talked about a minute ago. And they said it's to ensure that beginning of construction is not circumvented, and that it's restricting the use of broad safe harbors, and it really hones in and is going out of its way to say, hey, Executive order, Mr. President, we heard you, and now we are responsive. And they even patted themselves on the back and declared that the Treasury Department and IRS have determined that the guidance contained in this notice is necessary and appropriate to properly enforce the credit termination date for applicable wind and solar. So they said this is a notice, responding to the EO. Here's what the EO said, and we met the mark. So they're going through all of these steps basically to telegraph and signal to the executive branch that we followed your instructions and we did what you asked us to do. Very specific. There's a little 3 here on the bottom. I don't know if you can tell. There's a footnote, and this is the only place in the entire guidance that says anything about FIOC. And all it says about FIOC is that this guidance is not about FIOC. So this actually has a very narrow scope. It is just for solar and wind claiming ITC or PTC related to this beginning of construction definition for projects trying to safe harbor by July 4th, 2026. So there are no changes to the FIOC safe harbor rules. There's no changes for other technologies. They really honed in. And then they also made it prospective. This is for projects beginning construction September 2nd. It was not retroactive. It was not active as of the date. It came out on August 15th. It's even forward-looking. So in every capacity, Treasury, came out with guidance that was very fair, very reasonable and balanced between the oppositional forces that I'm sure were pressuring it on both sides. So I mentioned before, physical work test and 5% safe harbor. Let's talk about those really quick. One thing, there's no changes. Okay, no changes to facts and circumstances. That's a safe bet for probably everything you're ever going to hear about tax and tax law and energy policy. It's always facts and circumstances, and that's reiterated multiple times in the guidance. The other thing where there was no change is the physical work of a significant nature. It is all about the nature of the work, not the amount of work or the cost of the work. This guidance also reiterated that offsite and onsite work is permitted. So if you're doing, the physical work test and you're a large wind farm or a very large utility scale solar farm, you were before and after allowed to use offsite work to qualify as starting construction. So if you ordered those wind nacelles or you ordered that transformer to start construction, even though it wasn't on the site itself, it is still eligible when you are considering what is the start of construction vis-a-vis this physical work of a significant nature. So no changes there whatsoever. And in fact, lots of very helpful rules that codified and made it even more I shouldn't say codified, more guidance that came out that made it even more clear what exactly they're talking about. So here they're saying offsite includes manufacture of components and mounting equipment, inverters, transformers. All those are helpful for utility scale and wind. For folks on this, watching this video, you're probably a nonprofit doing a rooftop project or a project in your parking lot. And in that capacity, the only thing that might be useful here is support structures. So if you're building a carport, you may be deemed eligible for beginning your offsite physical work once you've ordered that steel and that canopy structure to be manufactured, even though it's offsite. The key distinction here is that it is custom for this project. If you're a church or a school or a Boys and Girls Club and you're starting your project and you're ordering solar panels, well, ordering solar panels is not custom for this particular project. The distinction here is the equipment being normally held in inventory, or specifically, being produced. A solar panel manufacturer is producing a bunch of solar panels that are being held in inventory. So if it's being held in inventory, that's not going to count under the physical work test. But if it's being custom built, then that is going to be something that's potentially eligible to say you started your offsite physical work of a significant nature.
So Lee, that would include if someone is manufacturing a custom solar panel or any custom piece of manufactured equipment, essentially?
Yes, and that probably takes us into some facts and
Okay,
circumstances.
okay.
So what is a custom solar panel, Nicole? Are you picturing like some lightning bolts on the
Like,
side?
exactly.
Uh,
Something like my logo is custom engraved on there. I have no idea. Just, devil's advocate here.
so I think that's a great question. And it's going to kind of depend on, is that something that's normally held in inventory? This might be different if it's utility scale, because if you had your custom logo, could that be sold into another project? I mean, maybe utility scale, they don't care. A panel's a panel, but a residential sale, they would care. But you start getting into these facts and circumstances questions. What if you custom ordered modules with a pink frame, right? Could those go into inventory and passed off to the next customer? Again, utility scale, are they going to complain if there's pink frames or not pink frames? Maybe not, but at residential scale, they might complain. It just kind of depends. But I think the salient point here is, if it looks like you're doing something just to play games and manipulate these, it's probably not going to work. Like, just don't play games with the IRS. That's like your number one rule. And if you do have a legitimate reason, then that's okay. Like, maybe you are Mary Kay and your color is pink and you're doing solar panels for your headquarters. And in that case, maybe you do have a claim to make you custom order these panels that's not normally held in inventory. Maybe you have a claim there, but just don't play games. Like, that's the more simple kind of answer.
Duly noted.
Um, they they told us more helpful information about on-site work and gave us this definition. So the installation of racks or other structures to affix solar panels to a site. Like, that's pretty helpful. Like, they're basically spelling out, what does physical work mean when it's on site for a solar project. They listed a bunch of things that's not included. So we've talked about this in our other videos. Any kind of planning and design, permitting, clearing a site, excavating, removing existing things from the roof. Like, those are all clearly things that don't count. So there's a whole list here. Those are in the bucket of preliminary activities. Those are not going to count. And that's sort of, in a nutshell, the physical work test. The physical work test didn't really change substantively. It just added a couple more, some clarity, and it's still available. It's still an option, but frankly, it's probably going to be used primarily by large utility scale or wind projects. The kinds of projects for folks on this video, small, medium, commercial, industrial projects, even up to some small community solar projects, those always were using the 5% test anyways. So
Yeah.
this is largely not a big deal and not an issue. So the 5% safe harbor test, they wrote in big bold letters, it's no longer available. It's gone. However, uh, they said, except as provided in section 6. So what's in section 6? Section 6 basically said, oh, except for projects that are 1.5 megawatts or less, those can still use the 5% test. So if you're building a couple hundred kW or a small distributed generation project, nothing changed. You can still use the 5% safe harbor. Everything is still available. You can use either the physical work or the 5% safe harbor. Really no big changes that you're going to have to make. There were a couple of small language changes around the continuity requirement. So before this notice, the physical work test had a requirement for continuous construction, and the safe harbor, the 5% safe harbor had a continuous efforts test, and the physical work had a continuous construction. Those are gone, and now they just say you need a continuous program of construction. So what is that? They tell us that just means you're continuing physical work of a significant nature. So as it sounds, you just have to be continuously making progress. But then they give you a bunch of reasons why you could have acceptable disruptions, which are very helpful. You can have weather delays, natural disasters, delays in permits, interconnection delays, financing delays, supply shortages. So they basically give you a bunch of reasons why you have to have continuous construction unless one of these things happens. But wait, there's more. In addition to the continuity requirements, they give us a safe harbor. And so this is another safe harbor that has not changed. We had this before and we have it after. So now there's a continuity safe harbor. And that continuity safe harbor says that as long as you place this in service by the end of the calendar year, no more than 4 years later. So, we're at August 18th. If you started construction today, you had 4 years. So take 2025 plus 4, you're at 2029, 12/31/2029, the end of the fourth year. If you can place this thing in service by the end of the fourth year that you start construction, they're going to deem it as being continuously construction. It'll deem that you have met that continuity requirement. So the continuity safe harbor is what pretty much almost everyone on this call is going to rely upon. And if for some reason you don't make that 4 years, you still have kind of another shot on goal because you might be able to prove with facts and circumstances because it says if it's not done by the end of the fourth year, now you're back to this relevant facts and circumstances test. That's quite a bit of common sense kind of flexibility that's going to allow people to complete their projects in 4 years. And if there really are extenuating circumstances out of your control, you still may be able to find a way to navigate to protect the integrity of that safe harbor. Okay, so just really quick, that's a lot of information. Wrapping up why all this matters. You really need to start your project now. I mean, that is the key takeaway. Now that we know the definition of beginning of construction is not going to change for projects under 1.5 at or under 1.5 megawatts, you need to start thinking about these two different safe harbors and safe harboring for ITC purposes, which is July 4th, 2026, and safe harboring for FIOC, which I know is not the content for this discussion on this video, but please visit our website. We have other videos on FIOC, which you can check out. For the FIOC safe harbor, you need to begin construction by December 31st, 2025. So this year, get your project started, meet the 5% safe harbor test, or meet the physical work test. One of those two pathways, you need to get the project started by 12/31/2025. We have other resources on our website where we have some other videos to talk more specifically about how to do that. But just know that beginning of construction is now absorbed. Like we have confidence going forward with this Treasury guidance. So we know what we need to do. And now it's all about starting now. Whatever you do, your takeaway from today's video, start your project now. And that means if you can start between now and the end of the year, the end of 2025, you're going to have 4 years to place in service, maybe a little bit more than 4 years. And the material assistance rules under FIOC, you're going to be safe harbored. They're not going to apply to you. So the sooner you can start, the better. If for some reason you can't start by the end of the year, and you start someplace in between January 1st, 26 and July 4th, 2026, well, then you're going to safe harbor for ITC, but you're not going to safe harbor for FIOC. So FIOC rules will apply. And if you can't meet those, and if you end up having to start after July 4th, well, now you're going to have to place your system in service by 12/31/2027. And your material assistance rules for FIOC do apply. So just start now. No matter how you slice it, the sooner you start, the better off you're going to be. And if you can get your project to meet those beginning of construction criteria, whether it's the physical work test or the 5% safe harbor, if you can start those now, then you're going to be in a better position with respect to safe harboring your ITC and safe harboring for FIOC compliance, which would be the topic for another video for another day.
Perfect. All right. So I don't know if everyone picked up the message here, but everyone should start now. Anyone needing assistance with solar financing solutions for their nonprofit project, please reach out to us at collectivesun.com through the contact us form. Thank you. Thanks, Lee Barkin.
Thanks, Nicole.